Good morning. Welcome to Jesus Time today. It is a Tuesday. That means that we'll get to read from the Bible today. Let's begin. This is my Bible. I open it wide and learn about Jesus from the words inside. And our Bible verse for the week, Psalm 56, verses 3 and 4. When I am afraid, I will trust in you, in God, whose word I praise. We've been learning some sign language and a song to go with that. Let's do that together too. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. I will trust in you. I will trust in you. When I am afraid, I will trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. All right, thanks for doing that with me. We're still talking about those patient camels that took poor Joseph all the way to Egypt from his home that he was living in. And we're going to go into the Bible to read a little bit more about why that happened and how that all happened. If you look in your Bible, Joseph is an important guy. We read a lot about him. All these pages that I'm holding, from Genesis chapter 37 all the way to chapter 50, you can read about Joseph and how God used him, how God had a plan for him to help many, many people. And it started with Joseph having some troubles with his brothers. He had lots of brothers. There were 12 sons in his family, but he didn't get along with his brothers. And let's start reading from the beginning of chapter 37, and we'll see that in the Bible lesson today. Now Israel, that was the father, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made him a richly ornamented robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. So Joseph didn't get along with his brothers because they thought that his dad loved them, or didn't love them as much as their dad loved Joseph. And that didn't make them get along very well together. And it talks more about how Joseph didn't really help that either. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. So Joseph had a dream that he was going to be really important, and his brothers weren't going to be as important. And when he told his brothers about it, they got even more upset with him. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flocks near Shechem, so they were taking care of sheep. They were being shepherds. There could be some goats there too. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks near Shechem. Come, I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to him, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and with the flocks, and bring word back to me." Then he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph arrived at Shechem, a man found him wandering around in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They have moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan. But they had saw him in the distance, and before he reached them, they plotted against him. They didn't want Joseph to come by them, so they had a mean idea. So when Joseph came to his brothers, so when he finally got to where they were, they took off his robe, the richly ornamented robe he was wearing, the one his dad gave him, and they took him and threw him into a cistern. Now the cistern was empty. There was no water in it. So it was kind of like a big pit that they put him in, and he was stuck. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Did you hear that? That's where the camels came into our lesson. Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. His brothers agreed. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. So that's how Joseph ended up on that road to Egypt. His brothers sold him to make him go away because they didn't want him by them anymore. That's pretty sad, isn't it? We'll talk a little more about it tomorrow and see how God had a plan for that too. It sounds awful, but God can take awful things and turn them into great things because he loves us that much and he's that strong. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you tomorrow when we talk more about Joseph and how God had a plan for him. God bless your day.